a while. I'm really impressed with our attendance and how we do it. We brag about all of you being here. How many of you are here the very first time? Anybody? We got a couple. Thank you. It's appropriate that we begin our session with a word of prayer. Would you bow with me? Father God, as we begin the first August session of our Eat and Learn lunches, we remember that our local schools begin their fall terms this week. And we pause to ask your blessing on their activity. And it is an appropriate time to recognize our Evansville Wartime Museum's education team, their efforts to educate our young people about how our local hometown heroes supported our efforts during times of conflict. Our education team has provided 422 off-site tours and 583 on-site tours to our youth and their leaders, and we are proud of their efforts. It is our young children who will carry on our museum's mission in the years to come. Father, we ask your continued guidance and direction as we move our museum into the future. For we ask it in your holy name. Amen. Amen. Can we stand and do our pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please feel free in joining me. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good afternoon. It's still morning. Good morning. I want to share with you a new acquisition that we have received. Our education team has one of the stations where we talk about the United States flag, where we talk about the colors of the flag, how many stars. And so we thought we have not received an Evansville city flag. So we reached out to the building authority, and she directed me to the Signs by Designs in Newburgh. And yesterday, the Signs and Design lady brought the flag by, and she said this is a donation because it's free because you are instructing and educating the young people. So we are delighted, and if you would look that way, that's the new Evansville city flag. Last week Washington had a group here, and Marcia Lynn was teaching about the flag, so she not only gave them a United States flag, but we had these last week, so they also get an Evansville City flag. There's a lot of information in the flag, and we will publish that in the newsletter about why there are pillars and why it's light blue, how many stars, etc. So look for that in Larry Head's Riveter newsletter. He does an excellent job, and we're going to teach you about the Evansville flag next time. Thank you.
We've got a special thank you today for the Wolfgang Quartet. They've been playing, before we got going, live music. They played great. The quartet is made up of Beth, Lana, Dennis, and Ben. And they will be sticking around for a little bit. They have information about their group. And I think they'd probably like you to ask questions.
We'll just take it.
I would encourage you, if you have an event coming up, to talk to them. But we do have some confirmed playing that they have. They are providing free concerts on August 16th and 17th with the Wartime Museum, not that we're singing. The 16th concert is on Saturday at Mount Vernon High School. It's in the auditorium. It's in Mount Vernon, Indiana. And on Sunday, August 17th at Trinity United Methodist Church here in Evansville. I don't have a time the concerts start. What time do those concerts start?
Saturday at 7.
Saturday at 7?
Sunday at 5.
Sunday at 5. Okay, I'd encourage you to go. An upcoming event we have, and this is could be a nationwide thing, but we are celebrating in our own way here at the Evansville Wartime Museum. We're going to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. So on Sunday, August the 31st, when we open at noon, we're going to close at 4. Admission is free for everyone. There will be a program that starts at 1 o'clock. It will be very short. But we're honoring all military veterans from World War II. We're encouraging them to be here so that we can videotape their stories. We're also asking any of the war workers in World War II to come. We'd like to hear from you. We're asking the general civilian population to tell us any stories that you have. I've heard stories from young people then, a little more seasoned now, of how they would say, we and my friends, we laid it back in the grass and we watched the P-47s fly over. And there may be other really interesting stories that we're going to lose unless we collect those. So those folks are invited to be here and share their stories, and we are going to be videotaping any individual who wishes to share their story. Now, not to be left out, if you're a veteran from any war, if you're a war worker from any war, our invitation always stands that if you come to the museum to tell your story, we will put that on videotape. So when you drove in today, the parking lot was freshly sealed with no stripes. That was not our plan. Sealing was our plan. The striping was to have been done yesterday, but a pop-up rain shower on Tuesday stopped our work. So tomorrow morning early, we're going to have stripes on the parking lot. And this is great timing because Saturday and Sunday there's a Huey helicopter from Columbus, Indiana that will be here, arriving about 9 o'clock, and sometime after 10 o'clock, for anyone who wishes to have a ride on a Huey helicopter, you get the strap in, doors are open, and off you go. And they will fly continuously until they need fuel, take a break, and then they'll keep flying round trips. So I encourage you, that's Saturday and Sunday this weekend. And then finally, Well, not finally yet. I'd just like to call your attention to our next speaker. His name is Paul Lindbergh. He's with a group called Mission First. They have the Sanctuary on the Hill, and this is out near Elberfeld. He's got a great story to tell. He's a veteran. I think that would be a great program to attend if you're able. And then finally, the main attraction today, Mike Clark, Evansville resident, Navy veteran during the Vietnam War. He did not serve in Vietnam, but he was in the military during that time. This presentation today talks about President Truman and the atomic bomb.
Okay, we'll try again. So, welcome everybody. I've been thinking, looking at the calendar, like I seldom do. Being retired, I don't have any free time, so I have to be on schedule. But today is August the 7th. Yesterday, in 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped in Japan. So, we're going to discuss President Truman a bit, the atomic bomb a lot, and some of the ramifications and some of the additions and deletions that happened during the time when this was all going about. But first, as a matter of introduction, that's a picture of me on the ship in Newport, Rhode Island. I was a personnel in second class from 1966 to 1970. I did enough good work that they transferred me to San Diego for 2 years to the service school command after that. So I come from a military family. My dad, Wally Clark, was in North Africa. I spoke on his adventures last time I was speaking here. This is my Uncle Bob. He was in the South Pacific at the same time. And the short fellow there was my Uncle Bill, who jumped out of an airplane in St. Mary-Glise, France, and during D-Day. And that's my father-in-law, who was on the island of Tinian, and his platoon was taking care of the grunt work for the atomic bomb. And the tall kid there is my son, Brian. He's a Gulf War veteran. Spent a year in Kuwait. And finally, we forget some of the women that were at home. This is a picture of my grandmother, Leila Clark, my dad, Uncle Bob, Uncle Bill, and some crazy idiot that jumped in just at the time they were taking the picture. So, you just have to be at the right place at the right time. I want to start with a brief description of the atomic bomb, what it is. This is what it is. If you don't have time to read it, and even if you did, if you're like me, oh well. I want to get to more of a clear understanding. Going back, my topic is President Truman and all his interactions with the atomic bomb, the atomic bomb and its interactions with Japan, first off, and then the rest of the world. Why did we need an atomic bomb? What is it? The atomic bomb is a powerful explosive device using uranium capable of wiping out an area of 1 to 3 miles when dropped from an aircraft. The U.S. needed one to end the war with Japan, save lives of an estimated 500,000 military U.S. soldiers and sailors and airmen, and perhaps 1 million Japanese innocent civilians. The decision obviously was very difficult due to many factors, chiefly the morality of it. The deployment was from a large aircraft capable of carrying it thousands of miles and dropping it with precision. The ramifications fall out from nuclear radiation and public opinion, which lingers today, because we didn't have any celebrations yesterday about the first dropping of that bomb. So, I thought it was nice to see the complexity of the situation there with that. It has to do with the splitting of atoms, and as a result, the release of massive amounts of energy and heat. The process was discovered in the mid-30s in Germany and Italy, and work began to expand its use. It was always known that this process could cause a lot of destruction, unlike anything known to man at the time. What I do understand from my reading is the temperature inside the bomb at the moment of nuclear fusion is more than 1 billion degrees Fahrenheit. It sent out a flash of white light 10 times brighter than the sun, and the heat on the ground goes to 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit in a matter of seconds. So you can imagine what kind of destruction it wreaks. Let's get to the point of why we needed the thing in the first place. Starting at the beginning, the whole reason was the fact that the Japanese were attempting to control Southeastern Asia, and the United States was in the way. The single thing that triggered the production of such a weapon of destruction was the fact that the Japanese would never unconditionally surrender. They wanted to maintain their emperor and their government style and what have you. Even after the first atom bomb was dropped, the elite of Japan wrote the emperor and counseled him not to surrender. Therefore, an invasion of the island was going to be necessary, and early estimates of casualties, as I had said before, indicated at least 1 million military people on both sides would be casualties. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, this is as good a picture as I could find about Southeastern Asia, including Japan, Philippines, and some other places there that are relevant. The Japanese leaders somehow concluded that if the U.S. military and Navy, Air Force were nearly destroyed, the U.S. fleet would collapse, and the U.S. would be in no position to fight, and then would sign an agreement to give Japan free run of the Southeastern Pacific, and so they could do what they wanted to do. In addition to Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, the Japanese performed surprise attacks on Malaya, Hong Kong, Guam, the Philippines, Wake Island, and Midway. Admiral Yamamoto, the Prime Minister Kanoya, figured a surprise attack to destroy the U.S. fleet would cause this to come about. The Pearl attack destroyed 328 planes, 8 battleships, and 11 other naval vessels. 2,400 lives were lost, and all it did was harden the resolve of the United States to take whatever action needed to stop the Japanese. The interesting fact about this, and I'm not going to take too much time to explore, is the fact that all the aircraft carriers, I think except one, weren't seen. And that's what they really wanted to stop, was the aircraft carriers, because they had taken the place of battleships in naval warfare at that time. So fast forward, in 1939, Germany invades Poland. And Einstein writes to Franklin Roosevelt a letter of warning, and I'll quote, "It may become possible to set up a nuclear chain reaction in a large batch of uranium, so that extremely powerful bombs of a new type may thus be constructed." The belief among American scientists is that Nazi Germany is currently at that time working on such a weapon. Roosevelt finally agreed to allow a group of scientists to explore the feasibility of creating a nuclear chain reaction. However, he doesn't see the urgency which Einstein tries to communicate. So, December the 7th, Pearl was attacked. December the 8th, Congress gives Roosevelt a declaration of war, and it was signed and put in the law. This is Pearl Harbor before the attack, and I'm sure we've all seen pictures like this. Maybe I can understand what kind of stuff went on. Soon Congress allocated substantial funds to the research program, and they called it the Manhattan Project, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with that name at this point in history. It was a $2 billion project at the time, which translates to $35 billion today. The reason the project was named the Manhattan Project is because the Army Corps of Engineers was originally assigned the task of looking into this and seeing if it could work and making it work. And most of their work was done in a certain city, and that's the project was named after the city where they worked. Thus, since they were in Manhattan Project it was. However, after careful consideration and security purposes, the civilians took over the process of developing the weapon, as again for security, to be better controlled for some reason. And even Einstein was not included in this process. He was considered to be extremely liberal and a pacifist, and was considered a security risk. By now, after much recent movie hype and publicity, we know that Oppenheimer was the name of the lead scientist chosen for the project. Oppenheimer was not an obvious choice to lead the project. According to history, he had a history of depression, eccentric behavior. He'd even been a member of several communist groups. He had no experience supervising a large group of people, and many doubted he had the experience to build the world's first weapon of mass destruction. However, General Leslie Groves, who was head of the Corps of Engineers at the time, was hell-bent, as the book says, to hire him. He said of Oppenheimer, he can talk to you about anything you bring up. He knows about everything, except sports. He doesn't know anything about sports. So I guess that's okay. This is where you may be able to see it. This doesn't work all that well. There's an X above Santa Fe and Albuquerque. The Trinity test site is down there where the first bomb was exploded, the test bomb. The X up there is where Los Alamos, the place where they did all the development and manufacturing of the bombs. That's where that was. It was the site of an old school ranch, and pretty soon it was ringed in security fences, rows of razor wire on top, guarded by soldiers and attack dogs. The employees were constantly monitored for security reasons, and news of the facility needed not extend to European and Russian soil. So on July 16, 1945, in the New Mexico desert, at a place called Coronado del Muerte, which is the path of death, the first test of an atom bomb was scheduled for 4 a.m. This is to limit the general public, they thought, from noticing the blast. But by 5:30, they were ready to touch off the first fuse. This is interesting. Technical difficulties and the threat of weather were part of what the delay was. And actually, at this time, minutes before they were going to test this bomb, the scientists, physicists, chemists, and Nobel Peace Prize winners haven't the slightest idea of what's going to happen if the thing explodes. That's kind of tricky. The bomb is placed at the top of a steel tower, and 4 miles away, there's a covered bunker where some of the people are observing and working. 10 miles away is where the majority of the personnel were, and this is called the base camp. No one knows if either location is at a safe distance. The first test of the bomb is called Trinity. It's a 10-foot round piece of steel case with a coil of wire tightly wrapped around it. It doesn't look very becoming, but again, these people didn't know what they were shooting in the dark. They didn't know what they were doing. Finally, at 5:30, the weather clears, technical problems were solved. The entire organization was on tiptoes and thin ice and all that stuff. They didn't know the amount of energy that was going to be released. They didn't know if it would explode symmetrically or in one direction. And they didn't know if it was going to go off at all. Oppenheimer bets another scientist $10 it won't even explode. Minutes before they're doing the test, and by the way, that was July the 16th of 45. I was born a day and a year later, so hold the applause. So this is a photograph taken from at least 10 miles away of the bomb. This is the first blast conducted. A reporter wrote, "One saw a fireball and immediately a purple cloud. The radiating heat can be felt from miles. It was like opening a hot oven with the sun coming out like a sunrise." And 180 miles away, 2 plate glass windows in a shopping building shattered. And they tried to keep this away from the public. And 180 miles, a lot of people don't know about that. So they determined the blast carried dust and smoke about 40,000 feet in the air. In a quarter-mile circle around the blast area is scorched black. The heat makes the sand turn into green glass, and they later named that green glass after the bomb. They called it Trinitite. So So the force was equal to 10,000 tons of dynamite. Everything in the blast zone for 3 miles was vaporized within seconds. This is a powerful piece of equipment. Oppenheimer is euphoric. His emotion is unmeasurable, one scientist represents. He tells the reporter, this hit me, and I know it's going to hit almost everyone in this room. Oppenheimer stated at that particular time, when this went off, he said, and I quote, "Lots of boys, not grown up yet, will owe their lives to it." So, as you well know, at this point, it's been a deterrent for a lot of land wars. So, at any rate, at the same time, Truman, then president, we'll backtrack a little bit. He was at Potsdam. They were talking about the spoils of World War II in Europe and who was supposed to get what. Truman was notified of the test and it was successful. He said nothing to Stalin. But Churchill was notified since he had been privy to the project from the beginning. For the purpose of continuity, historically, I'm going to digress from the bomb temporarily and talk about Harry S. Truman. 1944, Franklin Roosevelt was running for his 4th term as president. The Democratic National Committee defeated Henry Wallace's bid for re-election. At the time, vice presidents ran separately from the president. He was figured to be more liberal than Roosevelt, and they didn't need that kind of stuff at that particular time. Truman was picked because of a couple of major things. First, he was a senator from Missouri, middle of the country. Roosevelt had been governor of New York. Truman was viewed as a working man from a rural area, while Roosevelt was viewed as a rich man. Truman was viewed as less radical than Roosevelt and significantly less radical and liberal than Wallace. One might view his being chosen for vice president as almost the lesser of two evils. Truman's were literally, and this is surprising, Truman was vice president, and he literally was kept out of the White House until after Roosevelt died. Although he was president of the Senate, Roosevelt did not consult him on any issues of any importance whatsoever. He was in the White House. Once he was told of the project and the fact that Roosevelt had passed away, he knew 2 things. He was president, and the actual use of the bomb was his decision. In July 24th of 1945, Truman gives the okay to drop the bomb, only after conferring with his military advisors and Churchill's. And obviously the opinions were split on using the weapon. Eisenhower and some of the scientists discouraged its use. Truman weighed all the information and decided that the human cost of Allied personnel was too great to keep land fighting. Here's the rub. Roosevelt made the decision to bruise and use the bomb. Roosevelt is dead. Truman's president. Truman can order the halt of the project and halt the use of the bomb by making no decision to stop its use, which he had the authority to do. He was actually giving unspoken consent by just saying nothing. That's a two-edged sword. Truman could stop it, but he doesn't. Truman could have sold himself as a bystander, hands tied by a presidential decision, not of his doing, but he sucked it up and took responsibility. Now Truman knows, Stalin and Churchill know, dozens of scientists at Los Alamos know, but General MacArthur does not know. Interestingly enough, secrecy is so tight, MacArthur has not been informed and does not know of the development or imminent deployment of the atomic bomb, even at this late date. Lots of things happened on July 16, 1945, besides the test. 4 a.m., a truck rolls up into the USS Indianapolis in Northern California, the light cruiser Indy. They delivered 2 big boxes for deliverance to the island of Tinian. Not even the captain of the ship knows of the contents of these packages. There was tight security. He has orders to go directly to Pearl Harbor, pick up more stuff and personnel, and proceed without delay to the island of Tinian in the South Pacific. Indianapolis is chosen for its maneuverability and speed. The Japanese, at this time, wild card is, the whole thing is MacArthur. because he's leading the ground troops in the South Pacific, and he's planning a land invasion of Japan. He's spurred on by the fact that this would be the largest amphibious attack in the history of the world, bigger than D-Day, which would obviously put him in movie star category and sound his ego. He doesn't believe that a blockade or siege of Japan will end the war, and he disagrees with the chiefs of staff, the Navy and Air Force. And the reason that the chiefs of staff thinks the invasion is a terrible thing is because the Japanese have 4 million soldiers in uniform. They have thousands of kamikaze airplanes hidden in the countryside. MacArthur chooses to ignore those facts. It seems that he's been planning the invasion for months now and is dedicated to it fully. In late July 1945, MacArthur is informed that the Japanese have been moving 500,000 troops to the beaches of Japan at the exact point where he was planning on making landfall at Kyushu. He was figuring on facing only 80,000 troops in that invasion. Additionally, he's told that the Japanese have been building kamikaze subs. This is a picture that was actually staged for his arrival in the Philippines. He didn't lead anybody in. He waited until the beach was clear, and then him and the photographer went ashore. But anyway, the Japanese have been building kamikaze subs to hit landing craft as they approach the beach. 900 kamikaze planes were hidden in the jungle nearby. The Japanese have been retrofitting wooden airplanes and for kamikaze flights to avoid radar so they could attack ships without being noticed. In spite of all the compelling evidence and information about the Japanese movements and determination and the potential for human cost of the U.S. military, MacArthur was adamant about a land attack. History records that he has held this position out of a quest for personal glory and immortality, being known as the leader of the largest amphibious invasion in history. To amplify that information, an example of what the U.S. was up against in the South Pacific, Hirohito is thought to be divine, and therefore he had ultimate power. Yes or no, up or down? The Emperor said it, it's the way it's going to be. The war is over in Europe. The British and Americans have another fight in the Pacific. Truman was a World War I artillery officer in World War I, and he saw plenty of action over there, so he knows what the land war is all about. Okinawa is finally won at great expense. It took 82 days, and 12,000 Americans are either dead or missing. Once that fell, this cleared the way for the invasion of Japan. They already had some other bases in Guam and Saipan and Tinian, of course. Japan now has only a few days of raw material. They had a lot stockpiled, but to get it in motion is another thing, because men and women and children are by now been ordered to adopt a suicidal strategy called Ketsu-go, which requires fighting to the death. And on the battlefields right now, presently, at this particular time in history, Japanese soldiers were surrendering by great numbers because they were they were worn out, poorly clothed, poorly armed, and they had a clear understanding that the war appears to be lost, as they had little to fight with against any kind of invasion. Hundreds of thousands of Japanese are homeless and starving at the same time. Cities are in ruin. The Japanese Navy is all but completely destroyed. But Hirohito thinks that since the Army and Air Force can build new tanks and airplanes, victory can be his. Pride of not being overtaken by another country in over 2,000 years is keeping Hirohito from surrendering. His theory is that if they hold out long enough, they can win the war. Originally, that he and Yamamoto thought that if they could keep the U.S. at bay for 6 months, they could do what they wanted to, and then after that, they probably couldn't win the war. I'm not sure why they proceeded, but they did. This is a formation of, you can only see 3 airplanes and a lot of bombs, but there's some statistics here that will absolutely blow my mind. To give you an idea of the scope of the war, March of 1945, March now, 325 B-29 bombers. 325. That's a lot of anything. They took off from bases in the South Pacific, Saipan, Tinian, Guam, and they were loaded to the max with incendiary bombs. In order to carry the most bombs, the bombers had been stripped of their defensive guns. They flew 1,500 miles to Tokyo on this mission. And incredibly, the Japanese had trouble with their communications, radar, radio, whatever, and there was no resistance. They only lost 14 planes, and that was due to engine failure. And so many of those downed pilots and crew members were later rescued by PBY airplanes, called flying boats. This mission was known as Operation Meeting House and is the most horrific bombing in history, worse than any bombing of the war. These bombs were specifically designed to kill and destroy an area, much like the paper and wood structures in most of Tokyo and Japan too. This is a picture of one of the incendiary bombs. The bombs are made of 20-inch pieces of steel, 3 inches in diameter, about like that. These 20-inch pipes are bundled into clusters of 38 pipes, which are loaded into a thin casing and dropped from an airplane. At 2,000 feet above the ground, the casing opens, releasing each one of these pipes as a separate bomb. They plummet to Earth independently in a big spread. 3 seconds after impact, the fuse ignites the phosphorus torch, which then ignites the napalm, which is weird that's done in history. It pushes the napalm out of into the pipe and burning and sticking to anything it touches and burns until the fuel runs out. The Japanese were either unable or unwilling to launch any fighters to stop these incendiary bombers, partially because of weather, the lack of communications regarding the raid. And oddly enough, the Japanese pilots were afraid of the defensive guns on the bombers, but they didn't have any because they had been loaded fully with bombs and fuel. So the bombing of major cities continued. These attacks were conducted at night. It deprived the citizens of sleep. And so many didn't go to work, if there's a place to go to work. Schools closed and children were forced to go into factories and make munitions. This will give you an idea of some of the places in Japan, Tokyo. Hiroshima is at, I guess it would be the West Coast. But Truman gave this order to drop the first bomb in subsequent directories, and I quote, "The first special bomb will be dropped as soon after August 3rd, 1945, as weather will permit. Bombing one of the specified targets, Hiroshima, Kokura, Nagata, or Nagasaki. Additional bombs will be delivered on the above targets as soon as made ready by the project staff. Further instructions will be issued concerning targets other than those listed above. Dissemination of any and all information concerning the use of this weapon against Japan is reserved to the Secretary of War and the President of the United States." So in other words, it's highly classified and nobody needs to say anything about it. This is perhaps the most important directive in world history. Between March and August of 1945, 1 million Japanese had died or wounded in the 6 targeted cities. 10 million people are homeless in an island this size. August 8, 1945, B-29 bombers over Hiroshima dropped 500-pound canisters. This is over Hiroshima before the bomb is gone. The canisters opened at 4,000 feet, and hundreds of thousands of leaflets are dropped with a message written in Japanese. The message was lengthy, I'll just paraphrase it. The Japanese people were told to evacuate Hiroshima because it was ready to be destroyed. The Japanese knew that Hiroshima was a prime target, so they had already evacuated 100,000 people, but still there was a lot of folks in town. This was also broadcast on American radio in Japanese language, and the announcing leaflets were dropped all over Japan over a period of a week. So they had notice. Now, this gives you an idea of Japan is at the top of the screen. 1,500 miles away is the island of Tinian. You see, just north of Guam gives you some reference point. It's hard to get a map that you all can read. It shows everything. And so that's why we're showing you this one here. Tinian Island, north of Guam, is 1,500 miles from Hiroshima. And this is the air base that the United States built on the island of Tinian. And this gives you some small idea of the airplanes that were on that island. It just blows my mind that much ordnance. Colonel Paul Tibbets, a 30-year-old colonel from Quincy, Illinois, which is 150 miles over here off the Mississippi River. He's a veteran of, get this, I looked at this several times before it hit me. He's a veteran of 43 combat missions in Europe. And he's been flying the B-29 since their inception in 1943. Roughly 24 months, 43 missions, you do the math. Twice a month, he's done a combat mission. Here's the crew. In the Enola Gay, I'll get to the naming of these planes in a minute. Fuselage number was 82. The other airplane that dropped bomb in Nagasaki was 88, I think. 77, one of them. Anyway, this is the crew. He handpicked that crew himself from guys that he knew and could trust to do what they needed to do. This is a picture of the cockpit. I don't know about you, but I've never been in a cockpit of an airplane, and there's just, I don't need to go because too many dials and buttons and stuff like that. What they're going to use to drop the first bomb is 8 aircraft. 2 are there for backup, for emergency space. I don't know what that was going to be about. 3 of them fly ahead to monitor the weather, to communicate with the people in the Enola Gay. There's a photography plane. These are B-29s. There's another E-29 that will drop scientific instrument by parachute so that they can get radio readings of not only the heat, the violence, the air, the shock waves, whatever, because they needed to know what was going to go on. Because basically they had one test, they figured it was going to be a big deal, they didn't have any idea. The radio signals were sent back to the bases in Guam and Tinian, and of course the main airplane to drop the bomb. Now this gets a little bit more personal for me. I spent in total 62 days at sea, although it was in combat, North Atlantic, Mediterranean, Cuba, whatever. The bomb was delivered by the USS Indianapolis without incident to the island of Tinian. However, on their return, they were sunk by a Japanese submarine in a controversial tragedy. It's controversial for the simple fact they were night running and it was supposed to be all dark, and as I recall, they weren't. This is in a separate research I've done. And they were not zigzagging as they were supposed to be doing. They were just running straight. And the submarine saw them and took advantage of that situation, and they torpedoed them. July the 30th, the ship was torpedoed by Japanese Navy submarine I-58. It sank in 12 minutes. That ship sank in 12 minutes. 1,195 crewmen aboard. 300 went down with the ship. The remaining 890 faced exposure, dehydration, saltwater poisoning, shark attacks while they were stranded in the open ocean. There were very few lifeboats and literally no food or water. The Navy did not learn of this sinking for 4 days. The survivors were spotted by a crew on a routine patrol of aircraft. Navy PBY flying boats landed to save those in the water. Out of the 1,200 guys that went in the water, 316 survived. No other Navy warship at sea has ever suffered such casualties. It takes a while to get that out. The final preparation, August 5th, 1945. Final preparations for the attack were underway. early afternoon. This must have been really a situation. You had to put yourself there. There's people doing something they had no idea what they were doing, how they were really going to do it, if it was going to work, or if they were going to die instantaneously at that very moment. So putting all that into place, the final preparation for the attack is underway. Early afternoon, the bomb was loaded onto the plane. It was so big. The Fat Man, the next bomb, was the one that was so big, but they had to load it over a special place they had cut out in the area close to the runway. Safety precautions were at an all-time high, as you can imagine. A bomb like this had never been dropped, and it was still what one would call experimental. One of the key dangers that had become apparent at this time was that on Tinian, within the last few couple of weeks, 4 B-29s had crashed on takeoff, and their entire load of bombs detonated. You don't want this one to go off, because if it had, the island of Tinian probably would have been in half, or even maybe not even there. The plane was carrying 7,000 gallons of gasoline and a 5-ton bomb. Therefore, it was 7 tons overweight, and the whole mission was going to be tricky. In addition to the safety concerns on the island, the Navy had given orders no ship was to be within 50 miles of Hiroshima. 50 miles. So Tibbets named the plane Enola Gay in honor of his mother, 54-year-old Enola Gay Tibbets. His dad didn't want him to fly airplanes, but his mom said, if you want to fly airplanes, you'll be okay. And so he named the airplane after his mom. That was a great tribute. This is the guy that dropped the bomb. Everybody knows Tibbets' name, and a lot of people do, but nobody knows Farabay's name. Major Farabee Thomas Farabee releases the bomb at the proper time using the Norden bomb sight. You know, this is what a Norden bomb sight looks like. Previous to the development of this particular device, people had to look out over a cockpit or side window or something, find a spot on the earth from several thousand feet, push a button or pull a lever or something, and the bomb would drop. And there's hope that it got close. But with this sight, that's when precision bombing became a factor. And we've all seen bombing runs and movies and videos and whatever. So the mission, like to the mission, it's a 12-hour ordeal because they're 1,500 miles away from their target. The crew is obviously running on adrenaline, as you could just imagine. The bomb had to be armed after takeoff due to the crashes, as I had mentioned previously. They waited until they were an hour out of Hiroshima before they armed the bomb, because they didn't know if it was going to explode. They almost exploded the test bomb by putting a cable in backwards. And they were shaking like leaves until they got that fixed. So anyway, again, we're still in the dark on all this stuff. This is a picture of the first stump bomb. They named it Little Boy. I have no idea why. Going back to the Norden site, I want to make sure that I get this information out. The Norden bomb site checked all of these things that I'm going to mention. Airspeed of the aircraft, altitude, wind, the drop rate, in other words, how fast does 5 tons fall from wherever 1,000 feet they are, and the distance to the target that the airplane was at that time. That's a lot of computations. I've got something in my front pocket that do the same thing, but back then, it wasn't going to happen. So a Little Boy, back to Little Boy. There was hardly any resistance at Hiroshima because they had been running so many recon missions that the officials, the security officials, figured it was just some more recon planes that were going over and checking the weather or whatever it was. All 3 aircraft had been ordered to go as quickly as possible to avoid being any part of the blast. These are the 2 planes that were following it. That one that's going to drop the parachute with the scientific equipment, the other one's going to do the photograph. So the reason they had to be away from this blast because it was so severe. They were flying at 330 miles an hour, and they had to make a sweeping turn due to the size of the aircraft. And this is a pretty big airplane. And so it doesn't just turn on the dime. It takes a while. So they only had 50 seconds to drop the bomb when the bomb left the airplane to get away. And to execute and clear this area, or to be destroyed literally by the shockwaves, they made it 12 miles from the blast, and they were rocked so hard by shockwaves that Colonel Tibbets shouted flak, thinking reflexively that they were in anti-aircraft flak, because it was so rough it was just like flak. One of the reasons they got caught at 12 miles was the blast travels at 100 times the speed of sound. In 1 millionth of a second, Hiroshima begins to vaporize, and within within seconds, I'm not going to give you the number, but a whole lot of people are dead. That's a picture from one of the airplanes about what the bomb looked like when it fell, or when it actually hit the ground. It exploded 2,000 feet above the surface to give it more impact. That's a picture of what was left of Hiroshima a couple of days after the bomb. So you can see the absolute destruction power of the atomic bomb. Within just a matter of seconds, every person and building within 1 mile radius literally had vanished. Flash burns injure thousands of those who live miles away. The atomic blast wave travels 2 miles per second, and everything in its path is flat. The blast also creates hurricane speed wind, which spreads to fire and heat. The heat, and this is, I'm not going to go into details, you can figure this out for yourself. Rivers, creeks, ponds, whatever, were immediately turned into super boiling water. So, this is number 77, fuselage number. This is the boxcar. Now, it wasn't spelled with an X, and I'll explain that. The second bomb was to be dropped by Major Charles Sweeney, who had been handpicked by Tibbets for his experience and expertise. And they named their airplanes, and this was called Boxcar, B-O-C-K-S-C-A-R. The plane was named after Captain Frederick Bach, B-O-C-K, who was originally assigned to the airplane. The spelling was a pun on his name, and on the side of the airplane, you'll see it later, there's a picture, a drawing of the big fat man bomb with a railroad track and a boxcar in there, so kind of a play on words. But anyway, August 9th, that's Fat Man. That's the second bomb to be dropped. And it was going to be dropped on a town called Kokura. Ever heard of it? I have. I'll tell you why. The mission was the second bomb dropping mission was a mess. Major Sweeney had a rendezvous point with a couple other airplanes, and he couldn't find them. As it turns out, they were at a different altitude, and radio silence kept them from finding each other. So he waited 45 minutes circling, waiting for this airplane to show up, or one of them anyway. And in the time of war, he was soon the worst, and so he headed for Kokura. Meanwhile, the pilot of the other plane, who was looking for a boxcar, violated radio silence, and he says, "Boxcar down." Now, did you hear all of that? No. And it's because the only thing was intelligible was boxcar down. Nobody got the is part. So, of course, people on pins and needles, and as somebody once said, they're skating on thin eggshells. Come on. Skating on thin eggshells has got to be. Give me a smaller. Okay. So, anyway, he's waiting for people. He's burning gas. Think about this. So the only thing they know in Tinian is that maybe the other bomb has fallen to the ocean or somewhere in the airplane, and maybe it exploded. We don't know what. So as Sweeney approached Kokura, they discovered anti-aircraft flak, and there were 10 Zeros had gotten in the air, and they were chasing them, and they said, "Well, let's go to Nagasaki instead of trying to fight this out," because they didn't have any guns. So they turned tail and headed for Nagasaki. And for some reason, the Zeros didn't follow them. I guess they thought it was a recon plane or something. So the clouds were bad, and the conditions were bad, at Nagasaki even. They were even worse at Kokura. But the bombardier missed the target by 2 miles, which in essence, and in the end result, is it caused less damage, but it still was very effective. And here's where it gets interesting. That is a picture of the explosion in Nagasaki. I'm not sure where that came from, but that's what I love. But anyway, it survived somehow. And here's a picture of a fat boy and fat man and a little boy. So these are the 2 bombs that were, atomic bombs that were actually dropped in Japan. So he drops the bomb, Sweeney drops the bomb, and they turn tail for Okinawa because it's the closest place they can go. Nobody knows they're coming, and they're low on gas because he's circled for 45 minutes. So he did some, anybody that's a pilot knows probably what I'm talking about. I don't know, but I just read the book. He gets up, climbs for altitude because he can drop down slowly and use air as a motivator to lengthen his gas supply. So anyway, radio silence, Okinawa doesn't know they're coming. He does this clever maneuvering and got to, they were supposed to run out of gas 50 miles from the airstrip. That's not comforting. So that's why he pulled all this. And one of the reasons he was probably chosen by Tibbs. So the terminal, when they landed, the landing was so hard because it was coming in hot, as they say. The airplane bounced 25 feet in the air when they hit the runway. And they didn't get off of the runway until they ran out of gas. They had to be pulled off of the runway. Glad I wasn't in that airplane. So anyway, these are the 2 bombs that were dropped. A third was manufactured, but never used. I'm going to go back to the white slide. Truman receives, on August the 10th, Truman receives the Japanese surrender letter, which was not acceptable because they wanted to keep their emperor and all their other stuff in place. They wanted unconditional surrender because they knew that this just wasn't really the way to do it. Things were going to be pretty much the same if they left the same thing in place. So it was no go. So Truman sends a counter proposal, and these are all done through neutral countries. 3 days later, nothing has happened. They haven't gotten any reply from Japan. So hundreds, I don't know the exact number, I have 800, but I don't think that's right. Hundreds of airplanes drop incendiary and conventional bombs anywhere in Japan that they can, just to try to make a point. These are just regular bombs now, guys, but we're going to drop them on you until we hear something from the folks in Tokyo. So by August the 14th, that was the next day after they bombed, Japan agrees and sends a message through the usual channels, Sweden and Switzerland, the neutral countries. Now at the same time that they're surrendering, junior officers raid the imperial palace to kill Hirohito because he was such an idiot. And then they were going to surrender the country to the United States, but they can't find him. And what I do know about this is that that palace had tunnels and all this kind of stuff, rooms that you didn't know where they were. So he was hiding in the palace, and he did a good job of it. In the process, loyalist officers get involved. They found these raiders, and they killed them all. So they sent the message that said, we're done, unconditionally, we surrender. Truman then reads the surrender to the public. This is broadcast in Japan and Japanese, as well as the United States. And several hundred Japanese military men kill themselves in shame for the surrender. Reaction is mixed throughout the country because part of the country is relieved, part of the country is shamed because they surrendered. They hadn't been taken over militarily in 2,000 years. Well, I guess you can understand a little bit of that. Now let's go back to Missouri. This is USS Missouri in battle dress, camouflage to keep it from presenting a big gray picture on the horizon. Truman decided the signing would be held at sea instead of in Japanese soil. The USS Missouri is in Tokyo Bay with a host of other ships. About 300 U.S. and British, Australian warships are in Tokyo Bay. That's a sign to show, this is to show force, as well as a flyover by hundreds of aircraft, leaving no doubt Japan was done. So this next picture strikes at the heart. MacArthur was sitting at the table signing the acceptance of their surrender. The two gentlemen behind him are generals, one British, one American. You notice how the fellow here in the foreground is thin? For years he was a prisoner of war, so was the British general. They rescued them out of the prisons, and they brought them on board. To witness the signing. That's Colonel Paul Tibbets. Says in the history books that he paid a price for his role. He was dogged by controversy about the bomb the rest of his life. He never backed down from his belief that he had done the right thing. Funny how the fact that he was obeying orders, as we all did. He did not concede nor construct the bomb. None of that was of any consequence to criticizing people. So, as an afterthought, here's a picture of the Enola Gay and the boxcar. They've both been completely restored and are on display to the public. We have personally been to the Museum of the Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, with boxcar sets. I don't recall if I saw it or not. It's been 30 years. And the Enola Gay, this is a picture of the boxcar. I told you the bomb, the big fat man, boxcar above it, railroad tracks. That's kind of clever. The Enola Gay is in the NASA Museum in Chantilly, Virginia. Both Sweeney and Tibbets were eventually promoted to the rank of general. I'm going to read something to you, and then I've got one last slide that I can't read. So Truman wrote in 1963 to the Chicago Sun-Times on the August of 1963 anniversary of the dropping of the first bomb. The last sentence of his letter sums it up. He said, "I knew what I was doing when I stopped the war that would have killed 500,000 youngsters on both sides. If these bombs were not dropped, I have no regrets, and under the same circumstances, I'd do it again." And he goes on to say, "This letter is not confidential." Signed, Harry Truman. Thank you all for being here. I'll take questions if anybody has. I just can't read that out loud. I wouldn't doubt that. He's saying that there were rumors that some of the incendiary bombs were made here by Chrysler during the war. and I don't doubt it. It's, I'm reading the stuff on the back here, and it's amazing whatever they did during the war. My brother actually worked at Republic Aviation on a day overseas.
Couple of things. The fuses for the bomb, the incendiary bombs were made practice. Bomb working the lab.
Okay. He says that, first of all, he said the fuses were made here by Christ. His mom worked in that factory here.
Colonel Sweeney had to make 3 passes around Nagasaki before they finally got an opening in the area. Drop the bomb. One other interesting note, it cost $3 billion to build the B-29. Drop $2 billion bomb.
He said the cost of the B-52s was $3 billion. B-29 was $3 billion, and the bomb was $2 billion. So, and I had a limited amount of time, so you have to pull stuff out. But when Sweeney was at Nagasaki, the weather was so bad, and the reason they dropped the bomb where they did is because they couldn't see anything through the clouds. And the bombardier got a glimpse of the target area, pushed the button, and the bomb was off a little bit, like 2 miles, they said. And the lay of the land in Nagasaki was so that there was hills, and then it was on the coast, but then right behind those hills, and that lessened some of the impact of the blast, but still there was tens of thousands of people died and a lot of damage was done.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear.
The housings for the incendiary bomb were made by boots in cylindrical housing. You can see a picture of it back there.
Okay. He said the cylindrical housings, the 20-inch pipes and 3 inches diameter, were made here by Fuchs. Boots, yes, Boots Industry. There's a picture out somewhere in the lobby of one of those incendiary bomb locations. And napalm is a familiar thing to us folks who were alive during the Vietnam conflict. Anybody else?
There was also a rumor that Truman at the hotbed meeting of the atomic bomb. And of course, how many people
Well, that's a good question. He says there was a rumor that Stalin knew about the test of the bomb at Potsdam. He did. And he asked, how did he find out? I don't know, but I didn't read that, but I knew that Truman and none of his people told Stalin, they kept the secret from him, that he probably leaked around the horn. Exactly. Anybody else? Yeah, the bomb was set to explode 2,000 feet above the ground. That allows for more of an explosion. It's not, half of it's not relegated to the ground. So, in that regard, the earth movement was not as severe as the air movement. That's why 12 miles away, the airplane was locked like it was being hit with fire. And these were airplanes. Very heavy. Anybody else? I'll turn it over to our moderator here.
Thank you, Mike. So, 2 weeks, Paul Lindbergh with Mission First, Sanctuary on the Hill, will be here to speak. Tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday, the Huey helicopter will be here for rides. And then also, 80th anniversary, the end of World War II, the celebration here at the museum on August the 31st. Thank you for coming.
Great.